You are just temporary. Those were the words my only son spat at me after 15 years of sacrifices, sleepless nights, and working double shifts just to keep him fed, clothed, and safe. 15 years I raised him alone, while his father disappeared without so much as a phone call. 15 years of birthdays without a gift, parent-teacher nights with only me in the room, hospital stays with no one to hold my hand but my own trembling fingers. And yet, the moment his father reappeared, with his shiny new wife and her painted smile, my son turned to me and called her Mom. When he slid those adoption papers across the table, my heart cracked. He didn't even look ashamed. She's better at it than you. You were just temporary. My name is Lena Whitmore. I'm 38 years old. And if you think you know how this story ends, stay tuned. Because what none of them realized was that by signing those papers, they had just destroyed everything they thought they were gaining. What happens when the family you built rips itself away from you? What happens when betrayal becomes the sharpest knife, one you never thought your own child would wield? I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even let the tears fall in front of them. I just smiled. A quiet, broken, dangerous smile. Because while they were celebrating their new, perfect family, I was already making my first call. And when the truth finally surfaced, they would understand. I was never the temporary one. I was the foundation. And without me, they were about to collapse. The ink on the adoption papers wasn't even dry when they invited the neighbors over for a celebration dinner. I wasn't included, of course. My son, their new son, sat at the head of the table like a prize they had just purchased. I drove past their house that night. The lights glowed through the curtains. Laughter spilled into the street. My son's voice rang out, calling her Mom. Each syllable landed like a knife in my chest. But I didn't cry. Instead, I parked 2 streets down and opened my laptop. You see, what they didn't realize was that those adoption papers didn't just shift parental rights. They shifted liability. His father and that woman had no idea they'd just taken on every financial and legal responsibility for the boy they claimed as theirs. The medical bills I'd been paying for years? Gone. His father would inherit them. The college savings account in my name? No longer theirs to touch. The trust fund my parents had set aside for their grandson? It was tied legally to guardianship, meaning it had just defaulted back to me. And the part that made me almost laugh in the dark? The adoption erased my obligation to them. Completely. That night, while they toasted their fresh start, I filed a notice with the court. One that would trigger the transfer of every pending debt, fee, and financial tethers straight into their laps. By the time the cake was cut, my son's father and his perfect wife had inherited a storm they didn't even see coming. And as for my son? Well, he was about to learn the difference between a mother who bleeds for you and a woman who only smiles for pictures. The first crack in their perfect life was coming. And it would be loud. 3 days later, my phone rang. I didn't answer. I just let his new wife's voice fill my voicemail, cracking, desperate, not at all like the polished woman who had smirked at me across the lawyer's desk. Lena, there must be some mistake. We just got a notice from the hospital. Over $84,000 in outstanding bills, all in our name now. I almost laughed. Mistake? No. That was the cost of raising a child when the father disappeared. A cost I carried on my back for 15 years without complaint. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, listening to her beg. She wanted me to explain, to fix it, to help. The same woman who once looked me in the eye and said, "You should be grateful we're taking him off your hands." Grateful. That word still burned. By noon, more messages poured in. Calls from my ex-husband. From his lawyer. Even from my son. His voice trembled as he asked, "Mom, what's happening? Why are they saying it's our debt now?" For the first time in weeks, he called me Mom. But it wasn't love, it was panic. I didn't answer him either. Instead, I forwarded every new bill, every insurance rejection, every medical debt I'd been holding on to, all neatly packaged to their attorney. Legally binding, airtight. My signature no longer required. The house of cards they built was already shaking. And as I sat back, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't revenge by fire. This was revenge by silence. Because sometimes the most powerful sound in the world is the absence of your voice. And they were about to drown in it. The first time I saw them crack was at the grocery store. She was at the register, swiping her pristine credit card, when it was declined, twice. The cashier offered a quiet, embarrassed smile. She snapped, red-faced, fumbling for another card that barely scraped through. I stood 2 aisles away, unseen, watching the woman who once called me temporary crumble under the weight of the word permanent. By the following week, I got word through mutual acquaintances her boutique clothing store had temporarily closed. My ex-husband had started selling off his luxury watches online. They were cornered, scrambling, bleeding money they thought would last forever. And my son? He texted me, "Mom, Dad, and Sarah are fighting every night. They say it's your fault." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For years, I would have rushed in, defended myself, explained, tried to win his heart back. But not this time. Instead, I typed 3 words. Actions have consequences. And I hit send. That night, I sat in bed and scrolled through my old photos of him, his first steps, his gap-toothed smile, the messy birthday cakes I made with my own tired hands. I whispered into the dark, "You'll understand one day, my son. Maybe too late, but you will." Because what his father never taught him was loyalty. What his new mother never gave him was sacrifice. And what they all failed to realize was that my silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Every debt notice they opened, every angry call from creditors, every broken luxury was another reminder that while they laughed at me, while they erased me, I was building the quietest, sharpest weapon of all. Not anger, not hate, proof. And the proof was burying them, one bill at a time. It didn't take long before their desperation reached my doorstep. One rainy evening, as thunder rattled the sky, I heard the knock. My son's voice trembled through the door. "Mom, please. We need help." I froze. For 15 years, I had been his safety net, his shield, his mother. Now, he stood outside with the woman who had called me temporary, her designer coat soaked, mascara streaking like war paint. And beside her, my ex-husband, silent, jaw tight, eyes darting anywhere but mine. I opened the door just enough to meet their faces in the light. Sarah spoke first. We need a loan. Just something small. We'll pay you back. You're his mother. You can't just let him suffer like this." Her voice cracked on mother. My son's eyes pleaded. For a split second, my heart ached, because love doesn't vanish, even when it's betrayed. But then I remembered the papers he signed. The words, "You were just temporary." So I smiled. Calm. Controlled. "You signed away your loyalty, remember? You chose temporary." His face went pale, lips parting as if the words finally echoed back at him. Sarah hissed, "You can't do this. We'll lose everything." I leaned closer, whispering so only my son could hear. "Everything you lose now is everything I gave up to raise you alone. Maybe now, you'll learn what those years were worth." Then I closed the door. I stood there, my hand pressed against the wood, listening to the muffled sobs, the angry shuffle of footsteps fading into the rain. My chest heaved, not with triumph, but with the kind of sorrow only a mother knows, the pain of watching your child choose poison and beg for antidote. But I couldn't open the door again, because true lessons aren't taught with hugs. They're carved by consequences. The fallout was swift. Within weeks, Sarah's reputation as the perfect stepmother collapsed. The adoption deal she had flaunted at brunches, her proof of victory, was now her undoing. Agencies she worked with cut ties. No one wanted to be associated with fraud tied to financial misconduct. My ex's new family business crumbled under the weight of unpaid debts. And my son? He became invisible in their chaos. The boy who once sneered at me now stood in courtrooms, his voice shaking as lawyers recited his choices back to him. I wasn't there to gloat, but I heard every word from my attorney. He willingly transferred guardianship to the stepmother, they repeated. He willingly voided his rights to his biological mother's estate. Willingly. That word echoed through the chambers like a gavel on stone. At night, my phone lit up with his messages. Mom, I didn't know what I was signing. Mom, she tricked me. Please, I just want to come home. Home. The same home where I once patched his scraped knees, where I worked double shifts to keep food on the table, where birthdays were celebrated with homemade cakes because money was tight, but love was full. And now he remembered it. But memories don't erase betrayal. I typed back, fingers steady. You told me I was temporary. And I believed you. I didn't press send. Instead, I saved the draft. My hands trembled not from rage anymore, but from grief. Because revenge doesn't silence the ache of motherhood. It only sharpens it. Still, I knew this. He had to sit in the wreckage of his choices. Only then could he understand the weight of what he threw away. And until that day, my silence was the loudest lesson I could give. The silence cut deeper than any words. Weeks passed, and each one carved another line across my heart. He kept calling, sometimes angry, sometimes begging, sometimes whispering apologies I had once dreamed of hearing. But every ring was a reminder. He had chosen her. He had chosen papers over flesh, signatures over blood, and a stranger's promise over the woman who never abandoned him. Meanwhile, Sarah's empire of control collapsed in plain sight. The mortgage on their new house defaulted. The business she bragged about closed its doors. Neighbors whispered about police visits, frozen accounts, and lawyers circling like vultures. I stayed quiet. I stayed away. Until one morning my lawyer handed me a folder. Inside, final documentation. My son was no longer entitled to my estate, my investments, or even the small life insurance policy I once thought would secure his future. Legally, he was a stranger now. And that broke me because I hadn't needed revenge to cut ties. He had already done it himself. That evening, he showed up outside my house. Thin, hollow-eyed, desperate. He pounded on the door, his voice cracking as he shouted, "Mom, please." She left us. She drained everything. I need you. I need my mom. I stood on the other side of the door, my hand on the knob. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't open it. Because motherhood had been my gift, my sacrifice, my life's work. And he had thrown it in my face. Instead, I whispered through the wood. I raised you for 15 years. I loved you more than myself. You told me I was temporary. Maybe now you understand what permanent feels like. I walked away. The pounding stopped. Silence returned. But this silence wasn't mine anymore. It was his. The final page of this story wasn't written in anger. It was written in peace. Months passed, and I built a new rhythm, one without him. Therapy helped me release the guilt I had carried, the self-blame that whispered I wasn't enough. Friends surrounded me with warmth, reminding me that family isn't always bound by blood, but by respect. News of Sarah drifted back in fragments: eviction, lawsuits, even whispers of fraud. My son was seen at shelters, odd jobs, trying to piece together a life that had unraveled because of the very choice he thought would save him. It hurt to know he had fallen so far, but it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I had carried him, alone, for 15 years. And he had signed it all away with one cruel sentence: "You were just temporary." So I became permanent in my own way. Permanent in my strength, my independence, my refusal to bow to those who broke me. I poured my energy into a scholarship for single mothers, making sure no woman would ever feel as abandoned and invisible as I had. One evening, walking home under the glow of streetlights, I passed him on the corner. He looked at me like a ghost, his lips parting as if to call me mom again. But I just kept walking. My heels clicked against the pavement, steady, strong, unshaken. Because the truth was simple. I wasn't temporary. I was forever. And he was the one who chose to erase me. My justice wasn't revenge. It was peace. And it was mine to keep.